know, we've got some conversations to have about your book, about your process, and your, I'll call it the theory on cybernetic transposition. You're about success, about helping folks get what they want. If it's money, make all the money you want to make. But you have a substantial background in uh, higher education and artificial intelligence and everything. Do you mind, Mr. Lichtman, if you go over some of your credentials and how you got to this place of being a successful author and entrepreneur?
Oh, sure, no problem. It was an interesting journey. I was born with Asperger's syndrome, which is both a curse and a blessing. The curse part of it is that I was never able to connect with people the way that everybody else could. And I couldn't connect with my parents, my sibling, and so forth. And that went on to not being able to connect with teachers and so forth. So it made for a strange life, and it forced me to invent ways to interact with the world. I realized after I had an near-death experience that I came back with the ability to see through any situation to the heart of the matter almost instantly. And for example, right after I had my near-death experience, I had a work experience where I was helping a little Mennonite company in Pennsylvania. It was a family company that was embroiled in internecine conflict. I sat down with the head of the company, said, "What's going on?" He kind of mumbled, and then I got it. After a couple of minutes, I said, "Here's what's going on." He looked at me like, "Ah, how do you know that?" And I said, "I just know it." And it was right. And so I see things like that. Now, other people have that too. People currently like Bill Gates, Elon Musk. Um, if you look at them, they don't really connect with people too well,
Mm-hmm.
but they're kind of brilliant. Albert Einstein, another example. Uh, it's both a blessing and a curse. The curse has pretty much gone away because I've invented ways of connecting with people, and that's part of what I'm teaching. During my near-death experience, I met God. It was a pretty classical near-death experience. White light, meeting God, infinite loving and joy. And I was given the option of staying on the other side, which is much better than this place. In comparison, this place is hell and that's heaven. Um, or coming back and completing what I'd taken on for this lifetime. I decided to come back. So when I came back, I was given an awareness of how to make people's life a paradise on earth. And being an entrepreneur, I put on a month later a training for 250 people to teach them how to do that. It was a first try, so it was a little crude. Each person tried to achieve a seemingly impossible for them objective, and only 67% achieved in a month. Now, for the past 10 years, it's been 100%. So it's pretty effective.
Well,
Um,
yeah. You can't get much higher than 100% satisfaction of everybody achieving that goal.
it's rewarding, yes. Um, and it was one step on the way to a truly seemingly impossible objective, which I'm working on now, which is called saving the world. because we're heading for Armageddon. That's the way we're going. It's interesting. Most people say or think, gee, I wish I could do that. Or if God handed me a gift, I'd want to be able to do that, achieve that. I kind of like the movie Bucket List in that way. It's kind of like that. So
Yeah.
you don't have to have a bucket list for just before you die. You can have a bucket list for now, which I call a roadmap to making your life a 10.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you a question here about a bucket list, because you hear people talk about bucket lists and oftentimes they're talking about a destination. But a bucket list could be anything, right?
Right. A bucket list could be having, being, or experiencing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone on a spiritual path, it would be, for example, experiencing God, living in the heart of God. I reached that point a couple of years ago. Or it could be something else. It could be, as in the movie, climbing Everest to the top. It's amazing in teaching this to over 100,000 people, the variety of what would make their life a 10.
Did you come across, or do you have any data on what is the overwhelming to do or a bucket list for people? It's like you said, maybe it's climbing or going to the base camp of Mount Everest. Is there something where majority of the people that you've taught have said, I want to do this, or I want to go here, or I want to have $1 million?
Actually, there are a range of things that people want as a step toward a real bucket list. Finding a perfect partner, having lots of money, finding a perfect job, starting a venture, a small business or something of that sort. Losing lots of weight and easily keeping it off, doing their work in half the time with better results. Those are the most common things. And now, as far as the way out things, of course, I've told you mine, which is saving the world. People, in my experience, really don't take this seriously in terms of a long-term bucket list until they have taken care of what I call tomorrow's breakfast, making their present life a 10. And of course, that's the title of my book, Make Your Life a 10. If I may.
There it is.
Books. Yeah. So what I'm about is teaching people how to consciously manage their unconscious minds to achieve the seemingly impossible. What most people don't realize is the conscious mind is just like a viewer, like a TV. All the doing is done by the unconscious. We now know from a lot of medical research, particularly using functional MRIs and so on. Let me give you an example. One of the tests they did was when somebody wants to stand up. We all have that experience. What happens from a functional MRI point of view is about 5 to 10 seconds before you, quotes, decide to stand up, your unconscious tenses the muscles involved and changes your balance, Then it puts into your conscious mind, shall we get up or not? And you get a choice. Consciously, you can say yes or no. You say yes and you stand up. But all of the preparatory work has been done prior to that. So the way the unconscious works, it consists of a lot of habit patterns, stimulus responses. Let's talk about reading. That's something we all do.
Mm-hmm.
It's an extremely sophisticated ability. Have you ever watched a kid learning to read? They have to go through a 3, 4, 5 year process. They got to learn language verbally, that some sounds are associated with people, actions, objects, and so forth. Then they have to learn that some squiggles on paper are meaningful, and adults call those letters. And then they have to learn that combinations of those letters are associated with the words they verbally know, etc., etc., etc. But now we look at a book and we know what it says.
Yep.
It's all done unconsciously. There are a lot of unconscious habit patterns. Or
I
drugs.
want to I want to add that you do have some formal education in this area of like the mind and the brain development and psychology and so forth. So I just want the viewers and listeners to know that you are someone who actually can speak about this knowledgeably and intelligently.
I've got a couple doctorates. One is in uh, applied psychology, which deals with the unconscious mind and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is in peace psychology. From my perspective, it's pretty simple and obvious. And as you learn what I teach, it becomes pretty simple and obvious for you.
Well, what are some of these processes for the to train the subconscious mind? If there's a way to train your subconscious mind to, in effect, control your conscious mind.
Well, actually, I don't talk about subconscious mind. Let's talk about the unconscious, which
Or,
is pretty self-explanatory. It's what you're not consciously aware of. The subconscious is what's right at the dividing line between conscious and subconscious. It's what's just on the edge. You get glimmers coming through, and then there's a
okay.
conscious mind. The conscious mind is, in fact, a partition of the unconscious. And you might think of a big circle, and in its center there's a little circle that is the conscious mind. The big circle is the unconscious mind. Everything outside is a collective unconscious, God, whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so that's my model. Now, the trick is to learn to what I call dialogue consciously with your unconscious, to come into conscious awareness of your unconscious so that you can clearly communicate to your unconscious what you've decided you consciously want of the alternatives popped into your conscious mind by your unconscious. So say you want to make $100,000. Okay, you need to translate that from the conscious domain of words into the unconscious domain of actions, experiences, rhythms, patterns, and so on. And so I have a process to do that.
Mm.
And it's pretty simple. You need to first format your conscious objective in a particular fashion so that it is extremely precise, clearly stated, single focus, and so on. It's kind of like the very center of an archery target, so that your unconscious can aim its arrows at what you want to achieve. You translate that into the domain of the unconscious through imaginary experiences.
So, is this a stretch for me to ask or suggest that this sounds like creating a vision board? It would be something similar, something that you want to achieve or attain. So, you cut out a picture of a yacht or whatever it might be, and you envision that.
That would be a starting point.
Okay.
Now, say you have a picture of a yacht. Have you ever been on a yacht like that? Have you ever touched that yacht? Have you ever felt it moving? See, until you have that experience, you are only dealing with a conscious mind.
And this is actually the perfect time to let folks know if they want to get more information about you, order your books or anything else, they can go to your website, which is just stuartlichtman.com. So it's just Stuart, and your last name, it's Lichtman, if I'm pronouncing it correct, Lichtman.
.com, yeah, I have to stick on the https://www. Or your poor computer won't understand it.
Yeah, we'll make sure we get everything in the show notes. So, because a lot of this stuff is not only important, but it's helpful. It sounds like it's helpful for you to achieve your dreams. And as our conversation started out, this is about your bucket list, and these are steps to help you get to that point where you can check off that bucket list.
Yeah, indeed. One item on my bucket list years ago was finding my perfect partner. I mean, really perfect soulmate. And so I came up with a list of 32 characteristics. Some of them were kind of funny. Like, you ever seen the movie Mary Poppins?
Oh, absolutely.
You know where she holds up this ruler that says at a point of her height, practically perfect in every way? That was one of the points on my wish list. And so I met her through, once I had set up an objective, it took 2 days for me to get started. I was watching TV. I'm a Law and Order freak. I like watching that program. And I was eating my dinner. My kids had gone off to college, so I was alone. And my unconscious said to me, "Watch this." And up came an ad for eHarmony. And it said, "Do that." And I said something rude in response. Okay. So the next night, the same thing happened 3 times. I said something rude in response. Next night, it was 5 times. I said, "Okay, I give up." So I did, in fact, go to eHarmony. And third person I got was they give you a sheet with pictures and descriptions. And the third one had a picture of a woman in flickers with baby penguins crawling over her.
Oh, wonderful.
That was my wife in Antarctica.
I want to ask you something, and this is off topic, but sort of on point, because you do have a background in artificial intelligence, and right now there's such a big thing with the AI in media, in the world, meaning that it can write things for you, it could create things for you. is there something that you think that AI can help as far as helping you attain or achieve your bucket list or goals?
Well, there are two sides to AI. The good side is if you use it to allow yourself to become more human. Humans have abilities that I don't believe AI will ever begin to achieve, although ChatGPT is on the edge of that. My webmaster, I'm going to do a Kickstarter program, and I wrote out a script. I asked my webmaster and a few other people to take a look at it. My webmaster came back with a much smoother script. And I said, I didn't think you had that ability. How did you do that? He said, Chat GPT.
Oh gosh.
So that's good. Now, schools are afraid of Chat GPT because it interrupts their model. What's taught in most schools is not very helpful.
Hmm.
The foundational effect, learnings like reading and so forth are very important. But how much of what you learned in high school do you remember? How much do you use? How much of what you learned in college do you remember and use? Not
Yeah.
much. In fact, kids come out of college unable to do anything. They have to be trained. I know because I've run or directed over 100 companies. And if you hire somebody, you've just got to really train them to do that. I developed a technique to greatly accelerate that. But it's tough. Now, AI can replace a lot of the rote stuff. Why? I mean, rote history, that doesn't really help unless you delve into what it meant. What's the experience? What was it like being Benjamin Franklin, who was world recognized as a scientist? Most people don't know that,
Hmm.
but his experiments with electricity were groundbreaking, and they led him to be able to completely finance the American Revolution by getting the King of France, who was awed by his scientific ability. He got the King of France to finance the American Revolution. Bet you didn't know that one.
No. Wow.
Now, those are parts of history that are useful because they indicate what one person can do. Now, I don't think AI is anything near it. I don't think there will ever be self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, driving, if you remember when you learned to drive, how amazingly challenging it was. You had to consciously decide everything. How much pressure to put on the brake, how much to turn the wheel, and so on. Now it's automatic because you've developed these unconscious habit patterns. But a machine doing that? Come on.
This has been really fantastic. I mean, it's been very insightful, enlightening, and informative. So I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to you, your lecture. But uh, before we close out, is there anything else that you want to add as far as your courses that you might have? Because you do have some leadership system courses and things like that available, right?
Yeah, see, some people can learn from a book. Now,
Mm-hmm.
once again, I'll flash my book. Um, this book tells you exactly how to implement my techniques. Exactly, precisely, with lots of stories and examples to make it real for your unconscious. But some people have what I call blockers, self-defeating unconscious habit patterns that prevent them from learning from a book. So I have trainings.
Again, folks, this has been a conversation with Mr. Stuart Lichtman. So I hope you've all enjoyed it. I know I have, and definitely in the show notes, we're going to have the notes and links to his website, so you could, be in the know and understand how to achieve your bucket list. So thank you very much for this day.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it greatly.